Black power, y'all. Black power. Black power, Jamal. How you doing? Pin the comment. All right, the comment has been pinned. Black power, y'all come on into the room. Make sure you share this live in all of the groups that you belong to. And make sure you share it to all of your social media pages. Please. Because we need this political education to get out there. Black Hammer members, come on into the room. If you're not a Black Hammer member, you should be. But if you're not a Black Hammer member, come on into the room because we just really want to discuss what's going on with Huey. So we're going to be doing that this morning. So I'm going to give it just a few more minutes. And I actually need to... I won't have to be going off and on the screen anymore because a nigga invested in a power strip, an extension cord. So I will be able to see your comments with ease. And that makes me happy. Tell me what y'all had good to eat this morning. I want to know. Because I have not eaten yet. And I want to know what y'all had so I can eat good like you. Okay. Let me see what's going on here. Let me get the live stream up on my laptop and then we can get started. Here we go. So now I should be able to see your comments with ease. Won't have to be leaning. Because I only like to lean when I'm doing yoga. You know what I mean? So, but I don't like to dodge y'all. So, what y'all have good to eat this morning? Tell me, I want to know. I want to know that before we get into this book. So if y'all had something good to eat, put it in the comments so I get some ideas. Again, make sure you share the video in all the groups that you're in. Share it on all your social media pages. We got the links pinned at the bottom here. The book club does serve as a fundraiser for the overall organization. So if you're able to donate, the CashApp tag is down there. It's $BHBookclub, all one word. You can also go to the GoFundMe page and donate there. It is www.gofundme.com/blackhammerorg. You can also go to our website at www.blackhammer.org/donate and donate there. So all kinds of different ways to donate towards the Black Hammer organization and help us to continue to do this awesome work. So again, hashtag share when you shared it, share in all your groups, share in all your messenger groups, and then share in all your social media pages. If you like me and you have 11 of them, share it on all of them. So yeah, I'm glad y'all are here with me today, but biggest thing, make sure you share it, and we will go ahead and get started. Ain't nobody told me what they had to eat this morning, so I guess y'all just want a nigga to starve. That's all good. But you can also drop the hashtag what's on your bookshelf. If there is a book that you would like to hear us or us to have on our reading list, you should drop it here. So make sure that you hashtag what's on your bookshelf because we're always looking for our new ideas of things that we can discuss. Coffee and bread. All right, Nada. It's not bad. I actually have my tea right here. And shout out to my comrade Gigi. She put me on this vegetable sausage. I think it was from Publix. But it's really good and no meat. And I'm trying to get away from eating a lot of meat. So shout out to her for that. I'm looking forward to having a piece of that when I finish. But coffee and bread doesn't sound bad. But anyway, y'all, hashtag what's on your bookshelf right now. If y'all have, yeah, I mean, it's good. You put me on it. I'm just glad you gave me an alternative. So, hashtag what's on your bookshelf. If there's a book, something specifically that has to do with revolutionary science, something about Black liberation, colonized liberation, drop it in the comment section so we can put it, we can add it to our reading list. We will be discussing, voting very soon what the next book will be for the Revolutionary Book Club. So we really need your input if you'd like to have us read a different book. So, but today, y'all, we are going to be discussing chapters 24 and 25 of Revolutionary Suicide by Huey Newton. We've been on this book for several weeks, but it has been a very important book for us to dissect and analyze. Very important part of our history. So all the time that we've spent on it has not been, has not gone to waste. It has been very necessary. But we're going to be going through these 2 chapters today. The reason why we're only going over 2 chapters today is because the next chapter is the trial. And it is a very, it's a very lengthy chapter. And I think that's something not only that just for the length of it alone, we're going to need to spend more time on, but it's probably a lot of things in that chapter that we're really going to need to focus in on. So we're going to take that chapter and divide it up into 2 different weeks. So that's what we're going to do. Hashtag what's on your bookshelf. Make sure that you put those hashtags in the comments. I will be going over those so we can get some ideas to put on our reading list if there's something you want to have us to discuss. But I am going to jump into chapter 24. It's called The Aftermath. And if you remember correctly, when we left off the last time with me and Comrade Dia, and shout out to Comrade Dia, he couldn't do the book club with me this morning because of plantation obligations, but hopefully he'll be back with me next week. I miss my comrade. I need my comrade. But we're going to go ahead and power through it today. But chapter 23 left off after Comrade Huey had been shot by a pig in the stomach. When he and another comrade, what was that comrade's name? That comrade was Gene McKinney, and him were driving around after he had finished his parole, he was on parole, he had finished his probation and he was celebrating, and he was, harassed by some pigs that night and was shot in the stomach. So this is the chapter that's directly after that event. So the chapter actually starts, I'm going to go ahead and read this quote that the chapter 24 opens up with. It says, "Black brother, think you life so sweet that you would live at any price? Does mere existence balance with the weight of your great sacrifice? Or can it be you fear the grave enough to live and die a slave? Oh, brother, be it better said, when you are gone and tears are shed, that your death was the stepping stone. Your children's children crossed upon men have died, that men might live. Look every foeman in the eye. If necessary, your life give for something, ere in vain you die." And I know Huey goes into the book itself, the title itself is very self-explanatory as far as like giving your life for something. You don't die in vain. You die for something in liberating your people, but just not to die in vain. So that quote is very, very potent in what it's trying to convey. But we'll go ahead and jump in. So anyway, yeah, we're starting with the chapter after Huey was shot by the pigs. Huey was taken to the Kaiser Health Center, which is actually about 5 miles from where the shooting happened. Okay. He's taken to the Kaiser Hospital, which is about 5 miles from the scene. Let me see if I can. Y'all. Didn't mean to do that. I just want to make sure I can see your comments while we're going through it. Okay, so taken to the Kaiser Hospital, 5 miles from the shooting scene, and he, in the beginning, didn't even realize how he got there because he was shot, so he was losing consciousness, losing lots of blood, and he gets there, and eventually, he's getting care, then the police show up, and of course, they take him, cuff him to the bed, to the gurney. He's in excruciating pain, so you can imagine what he's feeling, just physically, what he's feeling. One thing that really stood out to me was the doctor participated in this. It's not even that I'm surprised by it, because we're talking about white power. This is their health structure as well. So any way that, all the countless cases that we heard of black people, it's scientifically reinforced that black people do not, and colonized people do not get the level of care when it comes to pain medications. They are, yeah, definitely. I was reading a comment from a comrade in the group, but definitely, that we are withheld from certain levels of health care that we're due. And, that goes for pain medications. They feel, it's been backed up that they feel that we're either abusing, or that we don't feel pain in the way that a white person would feel pain, and they withhold those medications from us. So, just that, alone, even today in 2019, that's still an issue. But you have the doctors who are participating in the torture of this comrade. One thing, he was saying that he was begging for a doctor to come when he was in the pain that he was, to loosen the handcuffs, and the doctor told him to shut up. And that there was also a black nurse that came in the room, and she was upset, but they basically told her she had to leave. The police, the pigs, were in here while in front of all these medical professionals, hitting him, calling him names, torturing him, essentially. And this is where we learned that he's being charged for the murder of a pig, John Frey, and wounding another pig, Herbert Haynes. And there's another charge that we'll get to a little bit later. But he's, that's why they're, fucking with him in the manner that they are. It says, I wanted to read a footnote at the bottom of page 189. He says the doctor, which was Thomas Finch, a young man of 35, committed reactionary suicide shortly after my first trial in 1968. He had been a witness for the prosecution at the trial, testifying about the nature of my wound and the sequence of events at Kaiser Hospital on the morning of October 28, 1967. It is generally believed that he took his own life out of a sense of remorse and despair over his conduct in the emergency room that morning, because he had violated all medical ethics in his treatment of a suffering human being. His conscience would give him no peace. Yeah, so, I don't even know what to really say about that, because you consciously watched while these pigs were torturing him, and you allowed that to happen. I think that I can see why you acted in the way that you did, if that's what you watched and allowed to happen. So yeah, that doctor committed suicide later after that event, later during the trial. Huey was actually moved hospitals. And go ahead and drop your hashtag read that back in the comments if you can. Really want to discuss those. Really want to encourage you guys to tell us what really stands out while we're reading this, because I want to make sure that we're all hearing and discussing the same thing. There are some things that, you can read a chapter or a text. I think I read somewhere that when you read a book or read a text or some sort of literature, whatever, I think about 10% of it actually sticks or something that you can recall. And so when other people join into the discussion and they say, you know, this is something that really stood out to me, that's stuff that helps other things to stick, because I'm probably going to read, this is my first time reading this book, but I'm probably going to read this book a dozen more times, hopefully in my lifetime, if I live to be that old. You know, and there will be something the next time I read the book that didn't stand out to me the first time. So please, we encourage you, put your comments, even if it's not necessarily a read that back, put your comments in the comments so we can discuss whatever is sticking out to you in this book, because, you know, this is so important that we really internalize what we're reading, not just we're reading for the hell of it. We're definitely not just a book club that just wants to say we're a book club. We're a book club that's about enacting change so that we can actually liberate ourselves. And we're learning from the leaders that came before us. So please put your read that back. And I just want to, you know, digest that better. Excuse me, y'all. So he regains consciousness. He's going in and out of consciousness because he's still in so much pain, still losing blood. And once, and on page 190, he regains consciousness. He's in the Highland Alameda County Hospital. He was moved there supposedly because he wasn't a member of the Kaiser Health Plan. If you know anything about Kaiser actually is a California-based health company, and I guess the hospital is probably where it all started. But they also are an insurance company as well. So lots of people throughout the nation, they have Kaiser Permanente as their insurance plan, and it's a very strict insurance plan, because if you have Kaiser, you have to go to their doctors in order to get care. You can't just go anywhere. You have to go through them. So with this being in Oakland, this is that hospital. My wound had been treated, and I was in he wakes up, he's got a penile catheter in, tubes running all over, so he's basically already chained to the bed, not going anywhere. He's hooked up to all these different medical machines, and he's heavily drugged as well. So keeping up with all the different events that are going on around him is hard because he can barely stay conscious. I'm going to say what my read that back was. It's on page 190. He says, my fear was not of death itself, but of death without meaning. And that actually relates to the first, quote that we read by Ray Garfield, A Time to Die, in that Huey's biggest fear was he did not want to die without having brought the level of Black consciousness and the fight really to a high point, to really encourage people to not only fight for their liberation, but to understand what is going on. This is how the police treat us. This is how the police are treating our people. And he didn't want to die without having brought that to a certain level of awareness among the people in order to encourage them to fight. So my fear was not in death itself, but a death without meaning. I wanted my death to be something that people could relate to, a basis for further mobilization of the community. So that was my read that back. So please drop your hashtag read that back in the comment section. I want to know what stood out to y'all in this chapter, but that was mine. He actually heard a song, a radio playing a song where they actually dedicate a song to him. They dedicated this to the Minister of Defense, which that was Huey's title at the moment. And he wasn't even sure that he had heard it because he was just in and out like that. But one of the nurses came in after that and then confirmed that, you know, that song was dedicated to him, and that actually gave him a lot of comfort, probably to hold on and to stay as lucid as he could to fight through this. But he's still shackled to the bed. The pigs are still harassing him, torturing him. He actually receives a letter from Dr. Aguilar, and he talks a little bit about her. But the letter that she wrote, which was published in the Black Panther newspaper, she's a physician. and I'm gonna read some parts of it if I don't read the whole thing because it is a little bit lengthy, but it's on page 191. She said, I can remember nothing in my medical training which suggested that in the care of an acute abdominal injury, severe pain and hemorrhage are best treated by manacling the patient to the examining table in such a way that the back is arched and belly tense. And remember, this wound, one of the wounds is in his stomach. So imagine that muscle being tensed and you've got a wound somewhere in that vicinity in that regard. Yet this is precisely the picture of current emergency room procedure which appeared on the front page of a local newspaper last weekend, looming large in the foreground of the same picture, so large as to suggest a caricature was a police officer. Could it have been that he who distracted the doctor in charge of the case to position the patient in this curious way? Unusual as it was, the picture probably did not disrupt very much the pleasant weekend enjoyed by my neighbors, nor disturb more than momentarily the conscience of my medical colleagues. To me, upon whose mind's eye is permanently engraved, this photograph is a portentous document of modern history. It represents an end and a beginning. Further, for me, there has been enough of listening and reading and pondering. The time has now come to speak, to act, and to fight back. I'm going to kind of skip down a little bit, but she goes on about how just depraved this he's being treated, just the depravity of the way that he's being treated. She goes on to talk about how as a doctor it was just beyond her that you would treat any suffering human being that way. And she ends the letter by apologizing to Huey for any aggravation or suffering inflicted by you during the course of the treatment of your injuries. I apologize for the subhuman conditions and horrors of the ghetto in which an immoral political and social system makes it inevitable that men like you are gunned down in the streets of your own town. And her name was Mary Jane Aguilar. She was a medical doctor. And they published that in the Black Panther newspaper, and Huey was able to read that. I thought he goes into detail more about who she was, but he does, of course, goes into, and I mean if you guys were reading with us the Assata Shakur autobiography, if you remember how the book actually begins, it begins with her after the shootout on the turnpike. It begins with her being tortured in the same manner by the pigs as Huey was in this regard. And she was in the Black Panther Party for a spell, and then she moved into the Black Liberation Army. But very similar in the way in the fashion in which this Huey's describing his experience. And I believe her experience happened in, 70, 72, 73. This is 60, this is 68. So they're very, the police know exactly what they're doing. It says, all the time I was in the hospital, the police did their best to exhaust me. Every time I dropped off, they kicked the bed or shook me to wake him up. So imagine being in pain and then sleep exhaustion, and these pigs are doing everything they can to help torture you. I think it's important that I read some. One of them held off a sawed-off shotgun up to my face, warning me that it was going to go off accidentally. Another showed me a razor blade and threatened to cut the tubes and let me suffocate. One of them predicted I would commit suicide by pulling the tubes out of my nose. Sometimes they even moved the tubes. They told me I was going to burn. They repeated their threat, and I would be gassed in a little green chamber at San Quentin. And if I escaped, they said they would have me killed. So, I mean, these are modern day gangsters. I mean, just when people talk about gangs, I'm letting you know the first entity or organization that comes to my mind is law enforcement, the U.S. law enforcement system. So let's go on to page 194, and I'm going to start reading your hashtag read that back here in a second, but During the time that Huey is still in the hospital, the Alameda County Hospital, Highland Alameda County Hospital, he meets Beverly Axelrod, and she was a lawyer that had defended Eldridge Cleaver and helped in getting him released from prison. Excuse me, y'all. Throat's giving me some problems. But she comes and visits him. She gives him some history on a gentleman that's going to be representing Huey Newton, Charles Gary, who has a long history of defending what it says to be the politically, racially, and socially depressed. So he has a lot of history with that. He has a lot of history with working for poor workers and the strikes and things like that, and upstate kind of northeastern regions and things like that. So he has a lot of history there. So he, they did a good thing by bringing him on. So Charles Gary actually was introduced to him by Beverly Axelrod. It says on page 194, Beverly, how he speaks of Beverly Axelrod is, he says, Beverly has never betrayed that confidence. And he's talking just about typically what you see when you're dealing with white liberals, white people in general who say they want to help. And he says that she never betrayed the confidence that he had in her. And he says he never really thought of her as a white person. And he says politically she was a left wing, but more important, she's generous and open, and an open human being capable of growth and change. I've known her now for many years. And often in the past, I discovered while talking to her that she had certain unconscious racist ways of looking at things, which all white people do. I mean, there's no way to get around that. That's why all white people are racist, because that's something you have to be aware of and you have to undo, because you live in a system where you've imbued that mindset, whether you want to or not. But he says, whenever this was pointed out, she would examine her attitudes and deal with them in a way that changed her life. It is the ability to change that convinced me she was genuine and could be trusted. So if you're gonna hold your white people to a certain standard, you need to hold them to a certain standard. That's thing one. But it needs to be that the things that they can do in order to help carry out liberation for African and colonized people, they're going to do it in a way where they challenge their own internal beliefs. They're not going to require a thing of you as an African or colonized person to do. They're going to do things within internally. I hope that's clear. So I highlighted that because it's so many things that if we're going to have people fighting this fight with us, that there's a certain standard that they have to be held to in order to do it. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to scroll up the comments and see if y'all have any. Let me pull this up. I'm so used to having to bend and lean and do yoga during this session. But let me look and see. Black Power, everybody who's joined. Black Power Keena. Black Power Cam. I already saw Jamal. So Black Power Jamal. Black Power Karina. Black Power Daniel. Okay. Excuse me. If y'all can, please post your hashtag read that back. We definitely want to see what y'all have to say. So I'm going to keep going. And before we go on to chapter 25, I'm going to come back and see if y'all have anything that stood out to y'all. But really, really enjoyed the conversation. Really want people to tell me what else stood out to them. By the way, I'm sorry about this big, bulky sweatshirt. I actually just had this nice, I like to show off my arms if you haven't caught on to that. And it's so cold in my house right now. I had to cover up, and I want to be shivering for y'all. So excuse the non-sexiness that I bring before you. I am eternally self-critical for that. So, but anyway, so Charles Gary is going to be helping to defend Huey with this. They go into a lot of things that Charles Gary did, even like during World War II. Also, another attorney that same day came to visit Huey, John George, who was a black attorney, and he's barred from the hospital room. He's not allowed to enter. Basically, anybody white that comes to see Huey is allowed to go in. Anybody black, unless it's family, they're not allowed to go in. And then overall, Huey hears the police basically talking about Beverly Axelrod. They hated them because they were considered to be white leftists and things like that. And they just, they mocked John George and just mocked him for being just an African, mocking his phenotype and things that white supremacist pigs do. Lots of family come to visit Huey. And of course, they're horrified by what's happening. And then eventually, Huey actually gets to meet Charles Gary himself. But, he gets to meet him while he's in there, while he's recovering from his wounds and things like that. At the bottom of page 196, he's starting to understand the seriousness of the charges, because I think, before, he knew that he was in some form of trouble. Obviously, he's shot. He ends up in the hospital. Pigs are, on him, harassing him and things like that. But I don't think he had yet understood that there were charges being brought against him. Felonies. Excuse me. And what he says, as I lay on page 196, it's the third paragraph down. It says, as I lay recovering from my wounds, I tried to assess my position to think of the immediate emergency, and also its a larger meaning and significance. No doubt about it. I was in serious trouble. I was fully under the control of my oppressors, and I was charged with a major crime that could carry the death penalty. As a matter of fact, I expected to die. At no time before the trial did I expect to escape with my life. Yet being executed in the gas chamber did not necessarily mean defeat. It could be one more step to bring the community to a higher level of consciousness. I was not trying to be heroic, but I had been preparing myself for death over a long period of time. And that's, essentially what this book has been about. Huey has stated that he didn't really even expect, or actually the next paragraph, he says that he really did not even expect for to live for more than a year after the party was started. And he understood that his death, that fighting for the liberation of African and colonized people was going to come with a hefty price tag. And he proved to be right. But he is preparing for this, knowing that this charge is being coincided with a death penalty, and that he might not make it out of this alive. Something on page 197, he says he's talking about how our history has been destroyed. The schools don't give us an accurate picture of our leaders. If they even talk about them, they're made to seem like they're violent thugs, that they're just, bloodthirsty for no reason. We can't understand why these niggers are acting this way. That, type of thing. Excuse me. And they discuss, he says on page 197, millions of black school children never learned about two great black heroes in the 19th century, Denmark Vesey and Nat the Prophet Turner, who died for freedom. White people had good reason to destroy our history. Black men and women who refuse to live under oppression are dangerous to white society because they become symbols of hope to their brothers and sisters, inspiring them to follow their example. And we actually read that at the beginning of, chapter 23? Because, it might have been chapter 22. It was one of the last we went over last week. It might even have been the beginning of part 4. That's what it was. The beginning of part 4 is the quote that this starts out with. And just the fact that they don't want you to get any ideas as an African or colonized people that you should be doing anything to aid your own liberation. If your liberation isn't tied into the capitalistic gains of the United States or the European, or anything that has to do with forwarding the European domination of the world, they are not going to inspire that that type of action from you, and they will seek out to kill you. In our time, Malcolm X is the supreme example. His life and accomplishments galvanized a generation of young black people. He helped us take a great stride forward with a new sense of ourselves and our destiny. But meaningful as his life was, his death had great significance too. A new militant spirit was born when Malcolm died. And it was born of outrage and a unified black consciousness out of the sense of a task left undone. So if Malcolm had not died in the manner in which he did, we may not be sitting here reading about a Black Panther Party and Huey's story, in the sense, because Huey stated that a lot of the inspiration for founding the Black Panther Party came from Malcolm's death. So they don't want people that can set an example like that for you, because otherwise you're gonna formulate these types of groups and reactions to this type of treatment that we're getting, and they would rather you just stay brainwashed and docile and unaware of why this is even happening in the first place to you. So after 15 days of being in the Highland Alameda County Hospital, his condition improved and he was transferred to the medical unit, death row prison in San Quentin. And they told him he was there for his own protection, but he was there, to finish his recovering process from the shooting. And then, he's not allowed to have any contact with anybody with him being on death row. So as he's, I guess, rolled in there, basically they're yelling, "Dead man, dead man, dead man." So everybody knows that they're not allowed to talk to him. The hospital wing is right next to this psychotic ward. And I mean, I'm not laughing about that. I'm laughing about the event that's getting ready to happen. But it's a man in there, it's a Chicano that Huey meets with or is introduced to, and his name is Robular. And he says Robular actually identified with the black Muslims, and he's always singing, he's serenading to Huey and everything like that. So they just, they're friends or whatever. And Robular ends up killing this colonizer that was set to be released in 6 months. He was set to be released in 6 months, and he ends up somehow getting into his cell and slitting his throat. And then he sings about it afterwards. I don't know how y'all feel about that. But yeah. And I don't even think that Huey even knew it happened when it did. They found the man dead in his bunk, and of course they knew Robular had done it. He's singing about it and everything. So after 2 weeks, Huey is well enough to leave, and they carried him. He ends up going back to the Alameda County Jail. That's where he was for his last incarceration. And he's there until the 11 months leading up to his trial. So, yeah, so that was a pretty, that summed up what happened right after the shooting happened. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss anything important, but again, just so similar to what happened with how Assata's, her admission into this process, how hers happened. It was just very similar. If you've read that autobiography and you read this one, it's almost just like the same exact things were done to her that was done to him on totally different ends of the country. We're talking about, this is California. Assata's sentencing and the everything leading up to the sentencing and everything that all happened in upstate, well, not upstate New York, but in New York. So this is nothing, specific to those cops over there or these cops up here. They're all the same. they're all the same. So I'm gonna see if you guys have any Black Power DP. See if y'all have any more comments. And y'all don't. So I don't know what's going on. Let me see what anybody's talking in here. Let's see. Please, let's see. All right. So Quayshawn says that her read that back was on page 181. It says, all the time I was in the hospital, the police did their best to exhaust me. Every time I dropped off, they kicked the bed, shook me. One of them had a sawed-off shotgun, up to my face, warning me that it was going to go off accidentally. Another showed me a razor blade and then threatened to cut the tubes and let me suffocate. And I mean, it's good that we're reading this again, because I want you guys to really, truly understand that they will stop at nothing to terrorize you. They're nothing is too inhumane, animalistic for them to carry out. One of them predicted I would commit suicide by pulling the tubes out of my nose. Sometimes they even moved the tubes. They were straight up torturing Huey, then saying accidentally and suicide are perfect, and so that are perfect examples of how completely dishonest and ruthless they are. You know what that makes me think about? It makes me think about Sandra Bland, and how they actually want you to believe that Sandra Bland committed suicide. That's what that makes me think of. People have not been posting read that back. Yeah, okay. All right, y'all. So just a reminder too, I want you guys to note that we have donation links, because this is a drive where we're trying to build the organization. So BH Book Club is the Cash App handle. If you want to donate there, if you want to donate on the website, you can go to www.blackhammer.org/donate. You can donate there. You can donate GoFundMe, www.gofundme.com/blackhammer.org. Right? Yep. So the links are pinned. So feel free to donate. We also always want you guys to join Black Hammer so we can continue to do the work, because just like the Black Hammer, the Black Panther Party spread throughout the U.S., that's what we're trying to do with Black Hammer. And it's so many ways for us to be able to do that, but the most important way is to get people who are committed to the liberation of African and colonized people. So if your heart is with that, this is the organization for you. So we'll talk more about that later, but please do that. Also, if you are just joining, please share in all of your groups on all of your social media platforms so that this education can get out there to the people, because you'd be surprised how many people don't know that this history even exists, that this event even existed. Even people who lived in the era in which all this was taking place. And so if we don't put this out there, they want this to be buried and for people to forget about it. And again, just like the quote says, they don't want those examples to even be, those are a threat. Those people who, like Huey, like Malcolm X, like Assata Shakur, like all the countless African men and women who, and colonized men and women who fought and led the example of setting up these types of movements, those are threats to this system, and they don't want those to exist. So if we don't continue to read this and bring this to y'all, then it won't be out there. So we're gonna go into chapter 25. Also, anything that you guys are out there reading, as far as what you would like to hear us read, drop a hashtag what's on your bookshelf, because we would love to add it to our reading list, and we'd love to discuss it and get it on our list to bring to y'all. I still don't see anybody who's talking about what they had for breakfast, and it hurts my feelings because I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to eat for breakfast after this. So y'all can comment that. I just need y'all to comment. So let me know that y'all out there. But yeah, so breakfast, what's on your bookshelf, read that back, all those comments down there. Or if you are wanting to join and want more information, that too. Also, something that I forgot to mention, if you need the PDF for this book, okay, Alexia Cardina said pancakes are a Sunday go for me. Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. That sounds like a plan. Thank you, Alexia. But we have the PDF for this book. So if you don't have the book and you want to follow along, we actually can get you the PDF. You could just drop in the comments that you need it, and we'll make sure that we respond with the PDF for you. So yeah. So chapter 25, this is where they start discussing the strategy of leading up to the trial. And as we've already talked about, Huey has a couple of lawyers that's willing to defend him on this case. But it says on November 12, 1967, the Alameda County grand jury returned an indictment. An indictment just basically saying they have enough evidence to charge you. So to bring it to trial, they have enough evidence to do that. And he was accused of 3 felonies. He's being charged with the murder of Pig John Frey, and an assault on Pig Herbert Haynes with a deadly weapon, and the kidnapping of a black man named Del Rose near the scene of the crime. And basically they're saying that he forced Del Rose to drive him around, and that supposedly that's how he got to the Kaiser Hospital. So basically, let me see here. Somebody's saying that they need the PDF, so we will get that to you, comrade. Okay, yeah, we'll make sure we get you that PDF. I'm having some issues with my laptop, but I did see that pop up on my phone. But we will make sure. Oh, okay. Alexia is saying she needs the PDF. So I will make sure that you get that, Alexia. I will respond to that comment, and I will make sure you get the PDF. So basically they're saying that that's how he supposedly got to the hospital, is by kidnapping some man to take him there. Even though he has no recollection of all of this because he's lost so much blood. How that would happen, I don't know. But that's what they're saying happened. The evidence that they're presenting to the grand jury in order to get the indictment presented to the grand jury included the bullet taken from Pig Frey's back, the bullet taken from Pig Hines' knee, and Hines' revolver, 2 9mm cartridge cases that had been found in the street, 2 matchboxes containing marijuana found under the seat of the car. I have been driving, various photographs of the cars at the scene, and a Xerox of the Kaiser Hospital records for the emergency treatment. It says the only gun that was found at the scene was Pig Hines' gun, and the 9mm casings were not fired from it. So they're basically saying that it came from some other gun, and they couldn't find at the scene, and they're basically pointing to think that Huey had a gun somewhere, and that's how that happened. Yeah, so we know how this all goes. They're going to trump up as much evidence as they can in any means that they can do it. They don't play by their own rules. They make the rules up as they go. They plant evidence in order to, for their benefit. So you know how that goes. But yeah, those are the 3 felonies he's being charged with. It was something I wanted to read at the bottom of page. Okay. Something I felt that was kind of important here. At the bottom of page 201, it says by political, because he wanted to use this time leading up from all this is happening right now, leading up to the trial, because he wants to use this as a political strategy. He's not worried about whether he's going to get out of jail or out of prison. He's not worried about that. He wants to use this for the benefit of the movement and for the people. So what he's talking about here He says, by political strategy, I mean this. I wanted to use the trial as a political forum to prove that having to fight for my life was the logical and inevitable outcome of our efforts to lift the oppressor's burden. The Black Panthers' activities and programs are patrolling of the police, and the resistance to their brutality had disturbed the power structure. Now it was gathering its forces to crush our revolution forever. Public attention was assured. Why not use the courtroom and the media to educate our people? Very amazing strategy, very selfless strategy. To us, the key point in the trial was police brutality, but we hope to do more than articulate that. We also wanted to show that the other kinds of violence poor people suffer: unemployment, poor housing, inferior education, lack of public facilities, the inequity of the draft, were part of the same fabric. So, yeah, you use the opportunities like this as best you can to show this is what's going on to African and colonized people everywhere, everywhere, all over the globe. And so you use that as a vehicle to carry out the message so that you can get people riled up, so they'll realize, no, I don't need to sit on my ass no more. I need to get involved. This could be me. This could be my kids. This could be my father. This could be my brother. This is our communities. Why did my brother have to die such a senseless death when he was just, existing? So you use this as a vehicle to carry out the message, to mobilize people. It's actually an ingenious strategy and a very simplistic one. So it was something else that I wanted to read too. It says the gun is the only coup de grace, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, the enforcer. And to wipe out the conditions leading up to the coup de grace, that was our goal. And I thought that he actually let's see. The system, in fact, destroys us through neglect much more than the police by the police revolver. The gun is the only coup de grace in the enforcer. The enforcer. So basically just saying that's what enforces people to do anything. To wipe out the conditions leading up to the coup de grace was our goal. So they want to get rid of the oppressor, the foot on their neck. That's what that's about. So I thought that was really important. And y'all, if you have hashtag read that best for this chapter, please put it in the comments so we can go over and discuss it. Again, we want to encourage discussion, and I want to see what stood out to you guys. So I'm going to read some of the comments that you guys have. Black Power Kimya, Black Power Comrade. It says, DP says their torturing of Asada and Huey also reminds me of the police murdering Erica Gardner in New York City Hospital. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Black Power, thank you for posting that, Gigi, for the comrade. All right, Black Power, y'all. Yeah, so y'all drop your hashtag read that back in the comment section so we can discuss what stood out to you guys. But yeah, so that's what we got so far in chapter 25. But it was something that I wanted to read. So then Charles Gary is basically building a case, or building the defense's side, Huey's side of what's going to lead up to the trial. But Huey makes it very clear that it's not his life that he's concerned about as much as he is what's mobilizing the people to continue to work in his defense. So he says, our goal was not to save my life, because I had accepted that what I thought was a certain fate. They would kill me. Everything we did in the next 11 months was predicated on my own death. So he's thinking very realistically, really, because, if you're going to die in this situation, I need to figure out how to keep this movement going after I exit, especially if you're like the building force or a strong force within the organization that you create. That's one of the most invaluable strategies that you can come up with, is how to keep that organization going. Because what you don't want, and unfortunately what we've seen all too often, is the organization typically dies with the person who created it or the leader, and that's not going to keep the fight going. Is, you know, if the movement dies with you, then what are you going to do? It's basically going to take people coming together, reading this, basically to recreate what you've already started. So it is so important that that is something that's taken into consideration. So, before that happens, before that death would happen. It says on page 202, because I saw my death growing closer, I often wondered how I would prepare for it. A person never knows how he will act prior to the experience itself. Knowing that the most valuable thing anyone has is his life, I could not be sure in what way I would give it up, particularly under the threat of the gas chamber. I had faced death before, but under different circumstances. There had been a spontaneity and a suddenness in each confrontation, and the possibility of outwitting death. But when the state kills you, there are no odds, and the inevitability is the death is absolute. So if the state has decided they're going to kill you, you know it's coming. You know there's no way of getting out of it, and that's a hard pill to swallow. And especially in you're exiting the world in that way, you know, at their mercy, you know. So then we go into talking about the strategy that Charles Gary is using. And he starts out by, he wants to prove that the grand juries, he wants to question the validity of the grand juries. Really basically that the indictment wasn't even just in the first place or legitimate in the first place. So they're arguing that. And Gary also presented arguments against the, which rightfully so, against the composition of grand juries, which they say rarely represent a cross section of the community, but also maintain that the system itself is unconstitutional. So they're fighting against all the logistics of that. He also argued that in asking for a grand jury hearing in my case, the prosecutor was doing something unusual and prejudiced. Alameda County statistics show that only 3% of all cases go before grand juries. So why his? The rest are heard in what is known as informations, where both sides argue before a judge, who then has the sole decision of calling a trial. So basically, like, why, if that small number of cases even go before the grand jury, why is this one? What's so big about this one to make this one go before the grand jury? And we know because, you know, you got some pigs out of all of this that got hurt. So Gary is doing the best he can with defending the fact that the case really shouldn't even be going before the grand jury. Says one of Gary's presentations concerned the physical movements of the grand jury. After examining, this is on page 204, after examining the official court transcripts of my hearing, Gary proved that the grand jury could not have possibly considered or discussed any evidence presented to him. He did a very thorough job of analyzing the minute-by-minute movements of the jurors on the final day. And I remember reading this and I was like, I mean, it stuck though, I think. Analyzing the minute-by-minute movements of the jurors of the final day of deliberations. The result was astonishing. The time sequence of the jury's movements that day, as recorded in the official transcript, proves that there could not have been any discussion or deliberation about my case. So basically, they went in there knowing what they were going to do. We believe that this happened. We feel that there's enough evidence. You know, they had no desire to discuss it. I mean, making it a fair trial. Why would they do that? After all the evidence had been presented, the members of the grand jury went into the room where they were supposed to consider the evidence and shut the door. Almost immediately, they came out. Since the evidence concerning my guilt was non-existent, not one person had testified that I carried or fired a gun. Their failure to spend any time weighing the issue is incredible. is exposing their indifference and fraudulence, Gary strongly reinforced his contention that grand juries are insensitive to the problems of the poor and oppressed. Now, the next section, hold on just a second. He points out that from November, this is in November, until the following July, and that's when his actual trial began. He says Gary was overbooked, but he also points out that this was an exceptionally long time between the indictment and when the trial was to begin. And it is a lot that's going into this, because the state is working, and they basically have already decided that this man, they want to put this man away and to separate him from the community so he can stop obviously organizing them. But that doesn't stop them, because the party is moving, even though Huey is incarcerated and going through this, and that's another part we'll discuss. But I mean, it's really powerful what happens with all of this too. But it says the media had made Huey a celebrity through television and hysterical newspaper accounts. And this is always surrounding the death of a police officer who they always try to make the hero. And, you got this terroristic organization over here who's calling for the death of, pigs and stuff like that. It says on October 17th, less than 2 weeks before the Frey shooting, they had once again demonstrated their brutality at a protest rally of 4,000 demonstrators in Oakland. This is on page 205. They said, I'm trying to see what, this is my read that back. Again, go ahead and put your read that back hashtags in the comment section if you haven't already, so we can discuss that. I had to read that back, and I'm trying to see if this was it before I read it out loud. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and read it anyway. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and read it anyway. It says, that day they attacked the demonstrators so viciously and with so little provocation that the entire media, even William Nolan's Tribune, criticized their behavior. The day became known as Bloody Tuesday. As a result, the police were very much on the defensive and anxious to vindicate themselves. To do this, they had to keep demonstrating how threatened they were, particularly by the Black Panthers. So, of course, they want to make themselves seem like they're in danger. The Black Panthers are bullying us, and we're scared, and we're doing the best we can to protect you all. And we've got these niggers here running around with these guns, and they're frightening us, even though we've made it illegal for them to carry their guns so we can terrorize them, but they need to do that so that they can win the public back to them, because the public is actually very much aware of how they're treating protesters, organizers, demonstrators, and when they're just really trying to defend their communities and bring awareness to how they're being treated. Black Power, Kimia, thank you for sharing. So, of course, they're stepping up their harassment on the Black Panthers. And, that doesn't stop the Black Panthers for rallying support. They're actually formulated a coalition between the Black Panthers and the Peace Freedom Party. And they said that the Peace Freedom Party was a group of mostly white young people who opposed the Vietnam War, and what else was it that they it was something else that they opposed, but they definitely opposed the Vietnam War, and they were trying to gain solidarity from them. And these people also believed that a two-party system was no longer working, and that a third party was needed in order to combat what we're seeing. They wanted strong anti-war leaders in the 1968 national election, and just to combat all the evils in our society: hunger, poverty, lack of housing, and things of that sort. And it actually became a legal party in most states, it says. Eldridge Cleaver ran on that platform, and there were other candidates that ran on that platform. And actually, this is what stood out to me, and this might have even been my read that back. I may not have had one that I actually titled as my read that back, but when they came up with Free Huey, I think, Cameron, I think you have a shirt that says Free Huey, right? I was gonna say, I saw somebody wearing the shirt recently, and I was like, that's powerful, I want to get one. And I think it was Cameron. I think it's Cameron that has it, but the phrase Free Huey was created out of this coalition, the coalition between the Peace and Freedom Party and the Black Panthers, and it became a rallying cry for people who believed in my innocence. So this is at the top of page 206. Meanwhile, I think this is it. Meanwhile, all across the country, Black people were relating to my imprisonment. The Black Panthers were recruiting members in every major city and also in some of the rural areas. In some cases, people just formed a group called themselves Black Panthers without even getting in touch with central headquarters. Sometimes groups would form around our 10-point program and use another name. It was all the same. The community was being educated. Their consciousness was being raised. So I think that was my read that back, and I didn't highlight it. I had highlighted some other things, but the reason I made that my read that back was because it's so much more important for these things to, you're sparking all these fires across the nation and getting people in on the movement and carrying out what the movement seeks to carry out. And it's so much more important that you have lit a flame in order to organize people to do that, rather than you are, oh, well, I'm going to go through all the proper channels to set up. And I'm not saying that that doesn't have some importance in and of itself. I'm saying that in order for people to be forming these organizations as a response to what's happening to Huey, as a response to what's happening to these Black brothers and Black sisters out on the street, and these colonized people out on the streets, that's so much more important. And you're having an impact, and that you're mobilizing people to do the work, to fight. They were gaining international attention, and then this is kind of where, but okay, so they're gaining international attention to the point where they're actually being asked to go and speak in other countries. One of the trips was to Japan, and Kathleen Cleaver, which is Eldridge Cleaver, married this sister, and Earl Anthony, a Black Panther, and he was based out of Los Angeles. They were, I guess, assigned to go over to Japan to speak on behalf of the Black Panthers and what our platform was, or what their platform was, sorry. And so that when they finally get over there, Earl Anthony basically misrepresents the Black Panther Party. There's really no other way to describe it, but this is all while Huey is locked away. Oh, there you are, Cameron. You got it from Melanin Apparel. Okay, bet. I'm gonna check that out, because I saw you in that. I thought that was really dope. So, so Earl Anthony goes over there, misrepresents the party, and he presented the party in a way where it was just strictly about white and Black, and how the Black, and says that the Black world would fight the white world. He just really grossly misrepresents what the party is actually trying to achieve, and he did that. He did that, and then just really screwed up an opportunity to go and really discuss, because it's much more than just, as we stated before, and he's going to bring up Stokely Carmichael again, but just the fact that we don't support or we don't endorse somebody just because they're Black or just because they're a colonized person, because it also has to do with that person's mindset and their politics and their class analysis, because we are also socialist and communist. And so, and we have that mindset because of the way that we're about redispensing the resources of the world to everybody. So, he gravely misrepresented what, the party was trying to represent. He said that this really angered him. This comrade was dismissed from the party. So, and that just put the party so many steps back, too, because when you actually have an opportunity to work internationally with other groups that can kind of help in solidarity and things like that, but then you're basically misrepresenting what your party is about and how it would benefit, because unfortunately you do have to bring something to the table that's going to benefit other oppressed groups of color as well as your own. We share the world with 7 billion other people. So I really wish that, I don't know how this comrade ended up going over there to represent the Black Panther Party, but I wish that had been done differently too, just kind of reading back on it. Let me see what you guys said. If you guys have any other comments so far about chapter 25 that stands out. Okay. Black Power, Charles. Excuse me. Okay, so no comments. Y'all are quiet today. What's up with that? What's up with that? I know for a fact y'all are out there because y'all talking about pancakes and coffee, and I asked for that. So I shout out to the comrades that told me what they were having for breakfast. Shout out to anybody else that's commented. But yes, please put some comments out there. I really want to know where y'all stand with that. This is such an important part of the book too, because of this is the political stance in which if you really think that it's gonna just happen, this will tell you exactly the opposite and what's going to be required, in the sense that when it comes time for political standing and action that might be needed, this is what's going to be involved. So I really would like to hear what y'all have to say about it. So yeah, that comrade, because of, just him knowingly misrepresenting what the party was about, he was expelled. Let me see, it was something else. They asked good questions that dealt with contradictions in a dialectical way, whereas Anthony was dealing in absolutes. For him, all meaning lay in the white world's oppression of blacks. And that is important, but that's not everything. Certainly this is much the problem, but it fits into a larger context. Ironically, it was the Japanese students who stated the party's actual position by pointing out other reasons and circumstances that complicate the black-white situation. Anthony betrayed the purpose of his visit by going on a solo trip and narrowing the possibilities of international solidarity. No wonder the Japanese students were disillusioned with the party. To this day, I do not know whether Kathleen Cleaver had anything to do with Anthony's confusion. She has always been kind of cultist in her black nationalism, so she may have influenced him. Kathleen really loved the party, but I doubt that either she or Eldridge were ever completely accepted of our ideology. And I thought that was important, because I was going to say, I know Eldridge Cleaver had betrayed the party in a lot of ways, and so him and Kathleen married, and they both probably had a lot of commonalities in the way they thought as far as working with other groups and things like that. And it could have been, in my opinion, when I was reading through this, it wouldn't surprise me if that was a way to, because at that time Eldridge had not been separated from the party, and it could have just been that it was a early state of sabotage. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but I'm just wondering too, because for that to happen and take place, I was just like, I just couldn't help it. That just couldn't help but cross my mind. So anyway, that comrade was dismissed. And then the slogan, "Free Huey," is becoming more and more powerful. And it's meant to signify a cry for the liberation of all blacks. So, he talks about the experience. Huey talks about the experience at the Alameda County jail while he's waiting for his trial. Who is that? Oh no, let's see. Somebody talking about they sick. I hope you feel better, comrade. I gotta scroll up to see who it is though. Oh, hey, Kimya. Okay, comrade. Well, I hope you feel better. comrade. So, basically guards are corrupt as always. Food was horrible. He spent most of his time in solitary because he protested the way that the prisoners were being treated. His cell was unusually small. However, at least this time, they did have a toilet and a sink and a basin in there. Still, terrible. They had to cut a small hole in the door and covered it with wire. I was gonna say that was supposed to take the place of there not being a window, but yeah. It was very hot. So in order for him to reach any level of comfort in there, he basically had to be in the nude at all times because of just how hot it was. He said it was even hard to breathe because of how hot it was. So of course they keep you in these conditions, and hopefully with hopes to break you. He was able to get out 3 afternoons a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He was able to visit his family, but the communication was just so it was just a horrible, just in order for him to say something, it was just like the way in which it came across. Let's see if I can. You had to walk around a screen hole, put your ear to another hole in order to hear the reply. Usually the babble from other visitors and prisoners made conversation strained. Fortunately, I was able to send letters and tapes out with my lawyers to friends of the party. So he was able to write, but just people coming to talk to him, it was the conversation was so hindered that it was, pointless almost. Let's see, I was actually not out of touch. Let's see. So Charles Gary is still working with him on the case. Then there's Alexander Hoffman. He was also another lawyer on the case. It says another lawyer, Faye Stender, who was involved in George Jackson's case at Soledad and thereafter. And another lawyer, John Escobedo, a Chicano lawyer, and Carlton Ennis, a black lawyer. So he has a pretty good defense team, and they're working around his case. A couple of rallies are started around his birthday. This is in February, so he's been incarcerated now for almost 4 months, and his birthday, February 17th, they had 2 large rallies, and lots of, people that were in the Black Revolutionary Movement, H. Rap Brown, and then also Stokely Carmichael, who we know as Kwame Ture. He also spoke. Okay, so Stokely Carmichael comes to visit Huey in prison. And even though there have been some things that Stokely's mindset had changed, there were still some grave things that they had disagreements on. So on page 209, he talks about that visit, and it starts on the third paragraph down. It says, "Our visit lasted just long enough for us to disagree. Stokely began telling me what it would take to get me out of jail. The only thing that would do it," he said, "was armed rebellion, culminating a race war. I disagreed with him. While I acknowledged the pervasiveness of racism, the larger problem should have been seen in terms of class exploitation and the capitalist system. In analyzing what was happening in the country, I said that we should have to accept many alliances and form solidarities with any people fighting the common oppressor." He objected to the Black Panther alliance with the Peace and Freedom Party and said we should not associate with white radicals or let them come to our meetings or be involved in our rallies. Stokely warned that whites would destroy the movement, alienate Black people, and lessen our effectiveness in the community. Later, he proved right in terms of what happened to the party, although he was wrong in principle. I really want to discuss that. And the reason I want to discuss that, y'all, is because I don't have all the answers to this. And I'm struggling with it because I kind of feel the same way as Carmichael does in trusting other groups. However, I do unite wholeheartedly with Huey's stance in solidarity with other groups of oppressed people. I can't ignore that, and I think I just really want to hear what you guys have to say about that. It was something else. Well, yeah, I'm just going to keep reading because he said, as a result of coalitions, the Black Panthers were brought into the free speech movements, in the psychedelic fad, in the advocacy of drugs, which we were and are dead set against. All these causes were irrelevant to our work, which was concerned with deeper and more fundamental issues, in fact, survival. When these things happened, Stokely warned whites would try to take the leadership from us. I did not believe him while he was running these things down to me. We were not into a racist bag. I told him that these developments were not inevitable, and at the time I felt sure that Stokely was afraid of himself and his own weaknesses. I responded to his racist analytics with class analysis. Okay, so one thing that I can say that I disunite with, and I want to be careful how I say this, because again, I unite with Huey's foundation and everything, and I think Malcolm did this as well too. And these, Malcolm X is somebody I regard very high. Like all the times I spent as a Christian, I probably, not in a cultish way, but I think I regard Malcolm as somebody like above where I even used to regard Jesus when I was a diehard Christian. Just in like as an example of somebody to look up to, and kind of thinking in terms of how that person would handle a certain thing in their life. But something that stuck out to me, and again, I would really like you guys to tell me what you guys think about this part, is I don't necessarily think that we as African or colonized people have the power to exercise any type of racism, any type of ism, due to our lack of powerlessness in this system in the first place. And it could be, I mean, Huey had a very sound understanding of class analysis, and I think he had a very sound understanding of the Black problem and the colonized problem. But I think that when it came to keeping white people out of certain organizing aspects of what we do as Black and colonized people tend to label that as racist, because it's like, okay, well, if white people cannot join, or if you can't be in solidarity with white people who have your best interests at heart as well, then that would be considered racism, in that you are excluding people solely based on race alone. And I would agree with that if Black or colonized people had the power to determine their destiny or their trajectory. Am I saying that right? But they don't. So that was one thing that I had an issue, or that I'm struggling with. And I appreciate any comments that you guys have around that. I think it just sounds, and like I need to read more about Kwame Ture. I've listened to several of his speeches, and I know he had an organization of his own that's actually still in existence today. I don't think it's very active, but just the fact that I can understand Kwame Ture, or at the time he was still Stokely Carmichael, I could understand his reservation about working with those other organizations based on how other experiences have been with I mean, look at Black Lives Matter today. Is it the same Black Lives Matter as it was when it was formulated? I mean, ask yourself that question. Ask yourself how that organization functions today compared to how it started, and then you'll have an idea of why I guess I'm saying I can understand Kwame Ture's reservations. Class analysis is so important, and it is, the overall capitalism, imperialism, and that is very important. It's not something, but white people have done this essentially to every because they're white, because they need the control of all resources. So it's been done to Africans, it's been done in Asia, it's been done in North and South America. Those resources have been harbored and have been stolen from the indigenous peoples of each of those continents, of those lands, and now they are all under the domination and control of European people. And so that is very important to understand, that they're not doing it to you necessarily because you are black. They are doing it to you because they are white, and they are going to seek to dominate and maintain control over all these resources that they're not about to give back to you, so that they don't have. I mean, why would they do that? So when you think of in a materialistic standpoint, you will understand why this is nothing that you ask them to do on a moral standpoint is going to be done. So that's very important. During this time, Bobby Hutton was murdered, because this is in 1968. So Bobby Hutton was murdered April the 6th, 1968, 2 days after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., April the 4th, 1968. And people are already emotional about the assassination of Martin Luther King. So, of course, Bobby Hutton being murdered, this is putting people on edge even more. People are afraid that people are going to riot. And, so it says, on the morning of April the 7th, Charles, Gary, and Bobby Seale came to see me. Eldridge had been arrested after the shooting, and Gary was going to defend him. He and Bobby were on their way that morning to a press conference at the state police at the police station, and they wanted a message for the people. I gave them a tape I had made urging the people not to riot spontaneously. This would only give the police an opportunity to continue the massacre. The people should arm themselves for protection when the police moved in to brutalize them, but not make themselves targets for defenseless slaughter. Charles Gary delivered my message at the press conference and also made a statement to the media about the deliberate murder of little Bobby Hutton by the police. It says, of course, Police Chief Gain exploded at that and accused Gary on radio and television of intemperate and false statements. So, but they got the message out. That's the important thing. And at the end, it says, meanwhile, Charles Gary was preserving in his motions to challenge the jury selection system. As a matter of fact, his efforts continued right up until the day my trial began. His investigations have had a profound effect on the whole judicial system, and their repercussions can be seen all over the country today. It is largely because of Gary's work that courts all over the country have become aware of a defendant's right to be tried by a jury of his peers. But in the summer of 1968, he was still fighting for his right as the date of my trial came nearer and nearer. So, again, this is all leading up to Huey's trial, and it's one that's got the national attention of black people everywhere, and I mean just it's got a national attention everywhere. So people are really seeing what the Black Panthers are doing, how the Black Panthers are moving. Huey's incarceration isn't just being done as though they're trying to get him out. It's being done strategically, very strategically. So yeah, y'all, that is chapter 25 in a nutshell. And I really wish I could have gotten a few more of your comments so we could have I really wanted to know what you guys thought about Stokely Carmichael's position with Huey Newton and the disagreement that they had. I really, 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 really wanted to discuss that with y'all. Okay, so Kimya, you got a couple of comments. Let's see. Okay. So, I'm so sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. Iyapu, I want this book. Okay. If you want the PDF, we can definitely get you that so that you can read along and follow along with us. And then Kimya says, I can unite with any African and colonized people, but the Peace Love Party was brought to the Panthers by Eldridge Cleaver, so I was side-eyeing that alliance. Yeah, comrade, me too. I don't see uniting with with, because I doubt, oh yeah, I know what you're trying to say. I don't see uniting with them because I doubt they can set down their privilege to do the work. And that's my thing too. I feel that historically, I don't feel that when I say colonizers, I mean this in the as much respect as I can put down. And I'm saying that in a regard that in the past, when colonizers join a movement alongside in solidarity with Black or colonized people, they tend to take it over, formulate it to meet their interests, and it usually dilutes what the organization initially set out to do in the first place. It displaces the initial mission of that organization, and it decenters the people who the liberation was surrounding in the first place, which is why typically I'm gonna say, well, we'll get to that when I open up membership, but I do want to say that the next part we'll be going into will be chapter 26. We'll be doing that next Sunday. It's the entire chapter is really lengthy, especially given most of these chapters before this were no more than about 10 pages. But this one is about 50 pages, so we're going to split it. We are going to be reading it. It goes into part 5 of the book, and this is the only chapter in part 5 because the next part is part 6, I believe. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. There are 2 chapters in part 5, but they're both fairly lengthy. So after chapter 27, we enter part 6, but we're going to split chapter 26 into 2 weeks. We're going to read pages 215 through page 240. That's about halfway through the chapter. And the following week, we'll finish up chapter 26, taking us through the end to page 265. So 241 to page 265 the second week. So, but for next week, we will read page 215 to 240, and it's discussing the trial. So be ready for that. In this book, y'all, we're getting close to the end, so we're going to be again voting very soon on the next book we're going to be reading. So if you have a hashtag what's on your bookshelf and it's a book that you want us to consider adding to our reading list, please drop it in the comments, because we will seriously consider that. We will discuss it when we meet around the book club, and if it's something that meets the criteria, it definitely needs to be around some sort of revolutionary science, revolutionary life, Black or colonized struggle for liberation, anything like that, anything that's about empowering and liberating Black and colonized people. We want to bring that to our discussion. So yeah, next assignment is pages 215 to 240 if you have this book. Also, we will post the PDF if you ask for it. I think it's already been posted, but we will still respond to a comment if you specifically ask for it. If you have the PDF, I'm not sure if the pages are aligned, but just know that we're reading about halfway through chapter. The chapter we're reading is the trial, and it's about halfway through the chapter that we're going through. Now, last thing is important. I'm going to see if you guys have any more comments. Black Power Chikande. We'll see if you guys have any more comments. But I'm going to open up membership. As I was talking before, we have a lot of things that we do, and there's a certain way that we operate in this organization. And we do not allow colonizers into the organization. And there is a really real reason behind that. And it's not meant to be said in a disrespectful way. It's meant to be said in a way to where we believe in organizing our liberation ourselves. And if you want to be on the right side of history and you happen to be a colonizer, you can donate. You can pay reparations. You can turn over skills. You just need to visit our website. You can email us to ask questions. That's fine. But given the history and scientifically the history of those types of coalitions and partnerships, we have seen that those types of partnerships tend to be more harmful than they are helpful to our movement. That's not to say that you cannot follow the page. That's not to say that you cannot comment in any form or fashion. But we are very unapologetic about that stance. But if you want to join and you are an African or a colonized person, you can sign up right now today at blackhammer.org/sign-up. You can, if you go to the website, just go to www.blackhammer.org. You can select join, and when you join, you are going to get an email or a phone call within 72 hours, and we are going to reach out to you, and we're going to see where you want to do your work. So if you want to do some campaigns and work in that regard, you can do that. You can do more than one campaign or more than one committee. You can do more. We have several different committees that you can serve in, and we need people in all of them. So right now, membership is asking for people that can come and help with following up with people when they sign up. It's really fun and fulfilling. We also do a lot of phone banking, so we can reach out to people that we've met with when we're doing on the ground work. So you can come in and help us do that. But it's a lot of fulfilling work you can do, and we need the bodies and the mouthpieces to do it. So sign up today. I mean, what do you have to lose? And for as little as $5 a month, you can join. That's your dues, and that money goes towards the things that we need to create, like leaflets, posters, to get supplies, pens, to go out to do the work, clipboards, things like that. Also to buy the other things that we need for the organization. So why not? But I mean, we really are about the leaders that came before us. So, we follow their example. Any type of, this is why we do this, so that we can have these discussions and say, discuss the major disagreements that our leaders had. So, us discussing the disagreement between what Kwame Ture and Huey Newton said, this is necessary for us to sit down and break down that analysis. So we really need y'all here to discuss this, or even just pose questions like, well, I'm not even really sure why they disagreed, or why Huey disagreed with Stokely Carmichael in that way. And we could all kind of break that down. We are this generation. They've come and gone, and they left this as a blueprint. They left these books as a blueprint. Malcolm X left his organization of OAAU as a blueprint. John Henry Clark. I mean, we could go on and on and on about the different things that we have to go by, and now it's time for us to do the work and analyze scientifically their disagreements, the things they did agree on, the things that even if they did agree on that maybe don't work, but we need to come together to discuss that. That's why the book club is here. That's why the Revolutionary Book Club is here, is for us to discuss this, and any other book clubs that are out there that are doing the work too. I mean, we need to come together as a community to discuss this as Black and colonized people, to set ourselves free. But we won't ever do that if we're not coming, if we don't study. So yeah, y'all still ain't put nothing out there about what y'all eating for breakfast. What's going on, Chai? Black Power, sis. Okay, Kimia says the PDF shows the book page numbers. Okay, good. So that way, hopefully the pages line up with what's in the actual hard text, and then we can all be on the same page. But it is just that halfway through it. But yeah, I definitely unite with your statement, Kimia, about the side-eyeing of that peace party. Yeah, but yeah, y'all, until next week, though. So yeah, like I said, chapter 26, the trial, the first half, and that's pages 215 through page 240. And then the following week, we'll finish that up. We getting close to the end, y'all. All right. Since y'all not going to talk about what y'all have for breakfast, I'm hot now. I'm ready to get this off But it's too late for me to be sexy for y'all now. So, Black Power, visit the websites, donate, join today. I love y'all, comrades. All right, Black Power.